Well, good morning. It's Thursday, January 14th, I think, or 15th. And so I'm in this anchorage here at Royal Island Harbour, and this is supposed to be the really windy stretch of time. I just looked at the windy app, and it shows 17 miles an hour with gusts to 25, and that's what the Bahamas weather forecast, like the government or the National Weather Service is calling for, and all sorts of stuff. But there's nothing. Just a couple of miles an hour of breeze. Water's dead flat. My friends behind me are still here. They're not my friends. I've never met them, but this is just a little odd. So I thought I would go ahead and take this video now, so that if things get weird later, then I'll have a baseline to show you. Let's hope it doesn't. So it's 2:30 in the afternoon on Thursday, and in the gusts, I've seen as much as 27 miles an hour, 27 knots of wind. You can see it's pouring rain. That ridge line over there has just gone by maybe 15 minutes ago. So, I mean, this is some fast moving weather. I've already had to, on one occasion, too loud. I've already had to, on one occasion, go up top and re-anchor. The boat started dragging in a gust of 25, 26. So I had to re-anchor and put out 125 feet of line compared to or chain rather, compared to the 85 feet that I had out earlier. So I'm monitoring. This is how I spend my day. I'm reading and monitoring the anchor alarm and just trying to keep an eye on what's going on. Look at that rain. And you can't even see the other end of the anchorage right now. Scary. Okay, Thursday night, 9 o'clock-ish, just before 9. And I don't know if you can hear this on the video or not, but it's still windy, really windy. I've seen gusts to 30, nothing more than that. And I have had to re-anchor a second time. I think that was around 5:30. Just before the sun went down. I had to go up, pull the anchor, which is a challenge in this much breeze, right? The boat's blowing hard against the anchor. That's why it's dragging. So there's a ton of pressure on the anchor chain, the boat. So you kind of have to put it into gear and drive towards where you think the anchor is from all the way at the back, while at the same time running the windlass to try and pick up chain at the same speed you're going forward, even though you can't see the chain or the anchor or how fast you're going. So it's a bit of a shit show when that happens. However, I've managed it twice today successfully. So I've now moved back almost to my initial anchor spot, closer to sort of the north side of the anchorage. I was a little bit nervous on the south side, as the wind is going to swing to the north. It's going to try and push me to the south, and I was in good shape at the beginning of the day, but dragged. And when I re-anchored, I anchored more to the south, just because I was trying to stay away from one of the other anchored boats. And as the wind started to swing to the north, it was pushing me closer and closer to shore than I wanted to, and then I got the anchor alarm. So I think I'm back in good shape. I've noticed a couple things. One of them is I just think I'm getting bad holding. Like, I think the bottom condition is not very good because with the new Delta, the stainless Delta that I picked up over here, I've sat through 2 storms, 2 gales that are at least this wind strength and had less trouble than this. And the other thing I think I've noticed is that maybe being in this harbor is not as advantageous as I thought, not just because of the bottom condition, but the gusts coming down the hill and into this little harbor are so swirly. Multiple times I've ended up where the boat has kind of sailed on its anchor a little bit, and I've been not quite broadside to the wind, but certainly not bow to the wind either. And that's enough to make, there's a ton of windage on a boat when it turns sideways. And I think that that's what has happened both times the anchor has started to drag. The boat has kind of sailed side to side, turned its side to the wind and exposed more windage. And that's what's caused it to drag. And I have not experienced that in some of the more open anchorages. So I think a couple of good lessons to take away from this. Anyway, need to make it to about 1 o'clock before, at 1 o'clock in the morning, the wind will have shifted almost fully to the north. And then it stabilizes and settles down to about 15 knots overnight. So I think around 1 o'clock, I'll be able to comfortably have a sleep. Until then, I'm too nervous and too busy monitoring the anchor alarm. So there you go. Difficult day. Good morning. Friday, January 16th, 9:30 in the morning. So if I look tired, if you think I look tired, you're right. It was a bit of a difficult day and night last night. Everything's fine. Boat's fine. I'm fine. But the wind event that I was in this little harbor preparing for turned out to be not terrible. 32 knots, I think, was the highest gusts I saw. However, I'm really not happy with this harbor as a choice for me. The bottom doesn't seem to have great holding, which is sometimes the case, and the wind gusts coming from anything on the west side, southwest, west, and northwest, really gust and shift around a lot. So the boat was swinging at anchor quite a bit. So yesterday I had to raise the anchor and re-anchor twice because I was dragging. And dragging is what happens when the anchor doesn't hold. The boat starts drifting downwind, and in my case there were 2 boats downwind of me that were at risk, so I had to re-anchor. So I'm gonna spin the phone around here and show you. I've got a screen capture of my track while I was at anchor yesterday, and I'll just describe what happened and what I had to do to deal with it. And the reason I'm sharing this is because, you know, in my last blog, or 2 blogs ago maybe, I talked about expectations and having realistic expectations, and I fear that I have given most of my attention to the awesome side of cruising a sailboat in the Bahamas, and probably haven't spent enough time talking about some of the risks. And so this is like a realistic job preview. If you're thinking about this, I want you to be aware that it's not all sunshine and lollipops. Sometimes you gotta deal with some lousy stuff. Okay, so this is a screen capture from my anchor track from the last sort of 36 hours. So again, it's Friday morning, and I arrived here on Wednesday. And so on Wednesday, I came in and the wind was blowing from the northeast. So I dropped my anchor right here where that red number 1 is. And what happens is the boat drifts backwards, and it probably drifted back here, sort of like that, and then swings down this little dotted path. And this is where I spent most of my time Wednesday until Wednesday afternoon. The wind got really light, and that's this sort of, I didn't spend much time here. There's not many marks, and so the boat swung around as the wind started to blow from the south. Here you can see this arc, this curve, right? So that would theoretically be a perfect circle around where the anchor is. Now it's important to note that when the wind shifts like that and the boat swings, the anchor has to pivot and catch again, right? The anchor is designed for straight pull. That's when it's most effective. So sometimes when the boat swings like this, you'll see it's not a perfect circle. It sort of gets egg-shaped as the anchor drags a little bit until it recatches. But for the first period of time, this was a pretty good circle. And then at around 1 o'clock on Thursday, this is after the first video I did yesterday where I said, there wasn't much breeze. And then before the second video where I'd already had to re-anchor, you can see that the green marks here start to go well away from the center of the circle. My anchor alarm went off. I had gone from being 40 meters from my anchor to being, I think, 47, and I was moving at a rate of about 3/4 of a knot, which is more than what's acceptable when you're at anchor. So what happened, a gust of wind came from this side of the harbor, and it shifted the boat sideways, and then the boat presents a lot more area to the wind, and it started to drag. And so you can see that this is where I dragged the first time with about 90 feet of chain out on my anchor in 10 feet of water. So that should have been enough, but it wasn't. So I lifted the anchor and puttered back this way and tried to find a new place to anchor. And so I had to turn a little circle here and then up and turn another full circle here, and then dropped my anchor right about here where the red number 2 is, and drifted back down. And you can see for a long period of time I successfully sat at anchor. That's from about 1:30 until about 5 o'clock. And late in the day, the wind shifted a little bit more north, and you can see that I spent most of my time down here. And at about 5:30, just before the sun went down, I started dragging in this direction as the wind shifted even more to the north. And you can see this little line here. It gets very shallow right here. So the risk is I drag far enough that I run aground, and so I don't want to wait that long. So again, anchor alarm went off. I hopped up, lifted up the anchor, and motored all the way over to here, not far from where I dropped my anchor the first time, dropped it again, and let out, in this case, 150 feet, which is way more than I should need. But in these bottom conditions and wind conditions, it seemed like the prudent thing to do. So my third anchor drop was here where the red number 3 is. And luckily, this curve here is where I spent the night, overnight. So you can see even just from 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock last night where I was up here, the wind shifted, that's probably 90 degrees. And if you think about the fact that it shifted from here, so the wind would be coming from the northeast all the way around to now it's coming from the south. Now it's coming from the southwest. Over here, now it's coming almost directly from west. Now it's coming from northwest, and now from north. So we've gone through almost 300 degrees of wind shifts in the last 36 hours. So you can imagine that's a pretty stressful period of time. I didn't get a lot of sleep until after about 1 a.m. And I had to single-handedly raise the anchor and re-anchor the boat twice. Thank goodness it happened during daylight hours yesterday. So there you go. There's a little bit of insight into, some of the less pleasant aspects of living on a boat at anchor.